Hi guys, and welcome back to the Cozy Corner. Today I'm going to be doing a review of all the books that I read in the month of July. So let's get started. The first book I finished in July I listened to as an audiobook, and that was The Last Tudor by Philippa Gregory, and I rated it a 4.5 stars. I personally loved it. I loved the way it was written. I really love Philippa Gregory's style of writing. I find it really easy to read and really engaging. So the book follows the story of the three Grey sisters. Jane Grey, who was known as the Queen for 9 Days, and her two younger sisters, Catherine and Mary. So the book itself is divided into 3 parts, each part being the story of one of the sisters, starting from the eldest to the youngest. And it's just a story about their struggles and hardships they faced in the court of Elizabeth I. And even though they were of royal blood, they weren't recognised by Elizabeth I until they had passed away, and then Elizabeth I would throw them like lavish funerals and stuff, but she wouldn't recognise them as royal blood when they were in her court. So it was quite interesting to learn a bit about that side of history. I'd heard of Jane Grey. I'd not heard of her two younger sisters and the important roles that they had within the court. So if you are a fan of historical fiction or the Tudor era, I do definitely recommend that one. So the second book I read was a poetry book, and it's called Yesterday I Was the Moon by Noor Unar. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And it is a lovely little poetry book about the struggles of life and the will to survive through the hardships. I rated this one and 4.5 stars again. I loved it. I tabbed it, I dog-eared it, I memorised poems from it. It was one that I felt deep within my soul, so I do recommend that one. I think my favourite poem from this one is I am fighting my losses, my traumas, and everything that brings ache, because I don't want to stare in the mirror and see a tragic case looking back. And I think that poem is so fitting to so many people. So many people are fighting every day to stay alive because they don't want to become another statistic. So I think Noor does that, and she reflects that really well in the poems. So if you're a fan of poetry, I do recommend that one. The next book I read was The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I rated this one 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Read it in one sitting, couldn't put it down. It was fast paced, there were twists, there were turns. I got a little bit cocky because halfway through I thought I'd figured out and solved the mystery. Turns out I hadn't. I did not see the twist at the end of this. So yeah, that humbled me quite quickly. So it is a YA, it's a young adult, and it's a mixture of paranormal, mystery and crime. So there's a group of 4 or 5 teenagers who have paranormal powers. So there are a couple of profilers, which means that they, just by looking at somebody, they can tell what that person does, what they're capable of. There's a human lie detector. There's a character who literally can tell straight away whether somebody's lying. There is a statistics, I don't know what you call them, statistics person. She just spits out facts with loads of statistics in them. What was the other character? There are a couple more characters with other paranormal powers as well. And these group of teenagers help the FBI solve cold cases. I'm hoping you can't hear that, but the neighbours downstairs have decided to start hammering, so apologies if you can hear that. Yes, so back to The Naturals. It It's the first in the series, and for August I'm reading the second one, and I can't wait because I just loved it so much. So another book I read was My Grandmother Sends Her Regards and Apologies by Fredrik Backman. This was the first Fredrik Backman book I've ever read, and I fell in love. I rated it 5 stars. I tabbed the heck out of it. There was just so much in here that I wanted to refer back to, passages that I reread. It touched my heart, it broke my heart, it made me cry. This is probably only the 4th book I've ever read in my whole life that's actually made me cry. So well done, Fredrik Backman. It was fast paced, it was easy to read, it was a perfect balance of humour and heartbreak in how we deal with grief. So it tells the story of 7-year-old Elsa, whose grandmother sadly passes away and leaves her with a mission. So it's just following little Elsa on her mission that her grandmother left her, and it's a story of grief, hope, friendship, community, love, and I adored this book. I really did. I could not wait to read more Fredrik Backman, so highly recommend this one. So one of the non-fictions I read in July was Space, 10 Things You Should Know by Dr. Becky Smethurst. I gave this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, and the cover is so pretty and very shimmery. I learned a lot from it, as you can tell by all the tabs that I put in it. I did find some of the chapters weren't written for people who don't have a good understanding of science and astrophysics, so I did have to do a bit of research alongside reading this to fully understand. But it is a good read. It's a nice little short read. Don't be fooled. I thought I was going to be able to read this in a day, but as I said, some of it is quite dense and did require a little bit of extra research just so I knew that I was understanding what I was reading. But yeah, if you like space, I do recommend it. Just don't beat yourself up if you don't fully understand what she's talking about to begin with. So after the space book, I chose a book that I thought was going to be a nice little easy read, a bit of a palate cleanser, and that was Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And I rated this 3.5 stars. I think I went in with very high expectations because one of her other books, The Secret Garden, is one of my favourites. So I did have quite high expectations. Personally, I think it falls a little short of The Secret Garden, but I do know other people who think the complete opposite. But this came highly recommended by one of my favourite booktubers, Ruby Granger. I know she reads it. I think she reads it every year. But it was a really sweet story. It was really sweet. I loved the first third, and I absolutely adored the third. I got a little bit not bored, but I did skim read a couple of pages in the second third of the book. But to be honest, I think that was just me being impatient because I really wanted to know how the story ended. I just wanted a happy ending, and I did get a happy ending, so yes. Nice, quick, easy read. I hadn't read it before. I recommend it. I think if you read it as a child and then reread it as an adult, you'd probably read it completely differently. But yeah, it was a pretty good read. And then I went for, I don't want to butcher this, but De Profundis by Oscar Wilde. Yeah. This for me was a soft DNF. unfortunately. I love Oscar Wilde. I love his style of writing. The Picture of Dorian Gray I absolutely loved. Flew through it. It was so easy to read. I love his style of writing. It's, yeah. But I don't know what it was about this, and the reason I only soft DNF'd it is I've put it back on my TBR because I do want to finish reading it. I just think maybe I wasn't in the right frame of mind at the time. Although saying that, I did put quite a few tabs in the few pages that I did read before I decided to put it down. So for those of you who don't know, they are letters, or a letter that Oscar Wilde wrote to his lover from when he was spending time in, I think it's Reading prison. And he was in prison for the simple fact that he'd fallen in love with a man. So they're quite deep. Like the writing is very deep, but it's also very, very good. So yes, that is going straight back on my TBR, and maybe in a couple of months' time, when I'm in a different mindset, I will pick it back up and finish reading it, because it wasn't even that I wasn't enjoying it, because I was enjoying it. I was just not fully appreciating what I was reading, and I feel that he wanted to actually really appreciate what Oscar Wilde was trying to convey in his letter. So yeah, I'm going to put that straight back on the TBR. Go there, and you'll probably see that resurface in a future video. The next book I read or finished in July was another audiobook, and that was Michelle Obama's Becoming, and I rated that a fantastic 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. I highly recommend it to everybody. It speaks about the struggles of coming from the south side of Chicago with, you know, her family didn't have very much money, and the struggles of, you know, being black in America. But the message was so much more than that. It was the reminder that you are worthy. No matter who you are worthy. You have a unique set of skills. You need to utilize them, because you can make a huge difference in the world. It was such an inspirational listen. Yeah, I found it really motivating that you shouldn't let your past and your circumstances define the impact you think you can make in the world, because on paper the Obamas should never have made it to presidency, because their background, their childhood, it didn't scream I'm gonna make a difference. But they both worked so hard to make that difference and do something with their lives. It was just such, yeah. I finished it and I was like, wow, yeah, that will make a lot of people rethink their value and their worth. So yes, I do highly recommend that. And then the last book I read for July was Elizabeth Strout, Tell Me Everything, and I rated this 4 stars. I love Elizabeth Strout's books. I've read 5 or 6 of hers now. I find them really easy to read. I love her style of writing. I love the storylines. I did find there were a lot of characters in this book that didn't. So the book's divided into 3 sections, but there are multiple storylines going on, and not all the storylines had something to do with one of the other storylines. So I personally think that it would be an easier read if she'd grouped a few storylines together for part 1, then another couple of storylines that were intertwined for part 2, and so on. But she did choose to throw all the storylines in, all the characters in across the 3 sections, saying that it was a very good read. It was interesting. Once I'd figured out and remembered who was who and what storyline they belonged in, it was a very, very good read. So yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend starting with this book if you've never read Elizabeth Strout before, because it was a little bit confusing. I would recommend maybe O. William or Lucy by the Sea or My Name is Lucy Barton. Those are a lot easier to read than this one, but again, if you like Elizabeth Strout and you haven't read this one, I do recommend it. So those are my reads for July. I think I've done 9 books, 7 physical books, 2 audiobooks, and then a DNR. So yeah, that's my July summary, and I will see you guys again for an August summary soon. Bye!